I don't disagree with that. And here we are, right on time.
All right, well, it's close enough to 7:30. Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the Worcester City Council being held this Tuesday evening, January 16th, 2024. Tonight's meeting is in council chambers and live streamed on YouTube. It is after 7:30, and the next regularly scheduled council meeting will be Monday, February 5th of 2024. Ms. Hamilton, will you please call the council roll, please?
Mr. Abernathy.
Here.
Mr. Gaffey.
Here.
Mr. Huzay.
Here.
Ms. Knappich.
Here.
Mr. Malta.
Here.
Mr. Myers.
Here.
Ms. Warden. Here.
All right, well, we have a quorum, and the agenda at this point will remain as presented. At this time, I would ask everyone to stand and join us, the members of City Council, in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a motion from council to approve the minutes from the January 2nd meeting? Motion by Mr. Abernathy, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gaffey. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Mr. Mayor, your turn to communicate with us, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I want to begin by turning this over to Chief Fisher, who's got some officer recognition that we want to make sure is done.
So, ladies and gentlemen of council, thanks for your time. Members of the audience, thank you. So, I feel that we need to recognize a shift of officers that was working the other night, and I will explain why. So, on January 6th at about 4:40 in the morning, they got a call to an apartment downtown, one of the nicer apartments above one of the restaurants, for 6 or 7 people who were cold and barely breathing. These officers arrived along with members of Worcester Fire EMS and gave so much Narcan to the 7 people that were down, they ran out.
Oh, my God.
Officer Moss had to get in his cruiser and get to the hospital and get more and come back. In total, they figure about 30 doses of Narcan. But the reason we're here tonight to recognize these officers is that all 7 of those people are alive today. Because of them, Worcester Fire, and I think there were 2 sheriff's deputies that also assisted. So that's why I feel it's important, because this could be a very different message had they not arrived and performed the way they did. So that's why I wanted to take a minute to recognize them all. So so for each of the officers here, so the letter is somewhat the same, but Tom Sirica, Kyle Kilo, Kyle Moss, Gina Iacco, and Sergeant Tom Weber. On January 6th, at approximately 40 hours, you and members of the shift were dispatched to an apartment in downtown Worcester because multiple people were cold and struggling to breathe. You and members of your shift, along with Worcester Fire EMS personnel, immediately began to render aid to these subjects. Multiple doses of Narcan were administered to 7 subjects, but more was needed. A trip was made to Worcester Hospital to retrieve additional Narcan, which was then used on the subject. Thanks to you and other first responders, all of the subjects were revived. Your actions, those of your shift that night, and other first responders at the scene saved multiple lives. Your actions epitomize Strive for Excellence, which is our mission statement and are the highest traditions of law enforcement in the Worcester Police Department. And these letters will serve as an official commendation. Thank you, and keep up the excellent work. So, Tom. thank you for allowing me to do this, appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, guys.
This shift is working tonight, so they gotta get back. to Worcester
They can
State.
stay in here where it's warm if they want.
I'm sure they would like to.
So while Ms. Knappich is doing the camera work, we wanted to lead off with them number one so we can get them back out there, but also because that's a great way to start the evening. Again, and we don't want to short the fire department on this too, or the Lake County Sheriff's Department, they are involved too. These guys are ever coming in, guys and women, and we want to take this opportunity to recognize them for all they've done in the communities. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Second thing I wanted to bring to council's attention is that Andre brought in a report this week, or maybe last, I'm sorry, it had to be last, but regarding our 2023 tax receipts. And it was good enough that, you know, a lot of these things I'm seeing kind of for the first time, and I thought, you know, putting on my council hat from my previous gig, I thought, council ought to see these numbers, because I think, you know, this is really impressive information, so, Andre?
Good evening, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so we obviously closed up the year and it's going over our year-end stats. You can see, I should have the numbers right in front of you. We have basically three categories of tax receipts. One is individual, that's, say, for example, self-employed, C-filers, net profits, that's if I own a company, I pay tax 1.5% on my net profits. And the majority of our tax receipts come from withholding, so, you know, I work for the city, they withhold 1.5% and submit back to the city. So anyway, withholding is by far our largest at about, probably about 80%. But the good news is if you see those numbers there, we were up overall, even netting out the refunds, 11.2%. Last year, about $2.5 million, which is a fantastic year. And what else is important about this is the income tax receipts make up approximately 76% of our general fund revenues. So it's very, very, very important. Just to give you some history, so over the past, I think I've been tracking this for 47 years. We've only had 9 down years or nine down years of revenues in that 47 years. And this is the largest dollar gain we've seen in that 47 years. The second largest. That's because when COVID hit, we lost $1.5 million, then we gained it right back, plus another $1.5 million. But so second largest. That's what I want to report.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
That is good news.
Yeah.
So, very positive news on the business front, and the economic health of the community. And he left something out of that report that I thought he was interesting as well, is that even though it's quite a significant jump from last year, it's about right where he projected us to be. So, hats off to Andre for doing a good job with that. Last little report we've got, I guess there's really two of them. I've asked Joel to talk to two kind of hot button issues at the moment. One is the cold weather shelter, which is timely. And the second is, even though we've been doing this as a community for about 6 months now, the Omni fiber situation, because we had some flare-ups last week that you're aware of. But you know, the nature of this project is, we had the same discussion 6 months ago, but until it's in your neighborhood, it doesn't make much of an impact on you, and now they're in a different neighborhood, so we thought it would be appropriate, and we have all new council members too, so some of you are fielding these phone calls for the first time, so we wanted to make sure that the community had an update, and you had an update on both those topics.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, we want to bring up the severe weather shelter, mostly because we're entering into the time of year where it's definitely sorely needed. It's been open several days so far down at Salvation Army, and they are, knowing what the forecast is, they're planning on having it open, you know, at least through Saturday. I'm sure it'll be a lot more after that, but based on the weather prediction. It does open at 5 o'clock p.m. for the severe weather. That's an hour earlier than normal. I will say that this is separate from the living room, which is run purely by the Salvation Army, by their staff. This is run by the Homelessness Task Force and then the nonprofit that they run everything through Homeward Bound. So we've been reposting that out on our social media and out on our website to make sure people are aware of that. And they do provide meals there, and I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware that that is available. They have not, I spoke to them today, and they haven't been out of capacity yet, so just wanted to make sure you're aware of that. We just want to make sure people were aware that there is a place for people to go. I also asked them about the current usage so far. So as of in the end of December of '23, they had been open 19 nights. And then they had unduplicated guest count. They had 58 people, individuals that had used it as of the end of '23. They used 266 cots so far. The average guest per night were 14. So they had 14 people staying there on average. And they do also offer laundry facilities as well. So they had 9 days where people were able to use that as well. And they've had over 75 people helping as far as volunteers, helping with laundry, helping people out. So I just wanted to let you know some of those numbers. We have made them aware that, if they get to the point where they need additional funds, additional days, to let us know that we set aside, a small amount of money to help with that, along with what they raise in the community. Just want to make sure they don't run into the case where they can't be open. So they're aware of that as well. So I just wanted to share that with you. The other thing, I know we had a couple instances, 3 actually, of water services that were hit. 2 of those were due to the subcontractors for Omni Fiber. One was a gas company, I believe, last week. So that's the most that we've had. We've had a few hits here or there. We actually require Omni to have materials on them at all times to repair water lines and water services. Our crews obviously are on call as well when those things happen. They are responsible to make sure those things are located as much as possible, not hit those services. And considering the amount of places they're working, the amount of footage they're doing, the amount of crews they have, overall, it's been fairly minor as far as those, but just the sheer volume of work that's going on unfortunately led to a couple of hits last week. It was repaired almost immediately. It was the very next day. The one that I think most of you got a call about. That whole process has been managed from the beginning by our engineering division. Omni had to get permits. They had to have people lined up for helping to locate utilities. At their subcontractors, they've had pre-construction meetings and periodic update meetings to make sure that they are doing everything that they're supposed to do. And obviously, when we had those couple of instances that were caused by them last week, they were shut down until they could give us reassurance. Everything was restored. They had all the materials online, and they were putting measures in place to make sure to limit as much as possible that happening again, meeting with their contractors and those kind of things. So just wanted to share that with you. I tried to share some of that. I shared some things they provided to us recently on their progress. They're about 60% done with their underground. They haven't started their aerial yet. They're waiting on their permits from each of the companies that owns the poles. Hopefully that'll be less disruption than all the underground in people's backyards, those kind of things. So they are progressing. I think I also shared with everyone that there's a couple other companies also out there working right now. Brightspeed, formerly CenturyLink, is also out doing work. And MCTV will soon be out doing a lot of their underground work in the near future to compete with the other carriers that are out there. I mean, the good news would be, hopefully, at some point in the near future, you'll have several options for cheap, very fast internet in the city of Worcester. We're just going through a little bit of pains right now and disruption with all of the work that's going on right now. But if anything comes up, if you're aware of anything, if a resident calls you, they can call John in the engineering division. He's the one managing that. He'll have all the latest up-to-date information. Most likely he's already heard of it, or of the incident by that time, which was the case. We had already been working on that particular water leak this last time, so.
It seemed like there was, what, 3 incidents in a very short period of time.
Correct.
So were there any consistencies in in their work? I can't imagine 3 fairly, I don't want to call them big, but disturbances in such a short period of time. Were there any consistencies of how far they're going down and hitting?
Yes.
That they're going to depths they shouldn't have been going to? or-
Correct. So I think John shared this, one of them was completely unrelated to the fiber. That was a gas company working in another place that was a water leak. The other one, they were doing boring under the ground, and they were told to stay at a certain level. They didn't stay, they went too low and hit it. And I can't remember what the other one was. There was a second one. It had to do with the boring contractor as well. Oh, I think it was mismarked. So they had it marked here, and it was, actually, the service line was over here. And I don't know the reason for that, but, so those were the 3 that happened all in succession.
Good question for Mr. Doherty. We do collect city income tax on all these crews that have been here for this extended period of time, right? I knew you did, I just wanted to let the public know that,
Perfect.
A, the people that are out there working are not city employees, we did not ask them here, they're here, they did have to get a permit, and B, we do collect taxes from them while they're here, so, thanks.
Good question. So thanks, Joel, for that report, and appreciate your patience, and our citizens' patience, because you can say, well, this is a one-off incident or whatever, but if it's your water line, it's hard to, accept that as rationale. And, as council people, you're on the front lines of that, and appreciate your patience with us getting that done. Although, I should say us, the contractors that are doing this. So, next thing I've got, Heritage Ohio. You should have all received an invitation on this last week. Our Main Street is is a member of Heritage Ohio. They're hosting their statewide convention here in Worcester on February 6th. And there's an opportunity to sign up and attend as members of council. If you did not get that, let me know and we'll make sure we get you one. As far as and again, this is new to me from the standpoint of Mr. Brenneman had his way of doing these presentations, and I've got my idea how I want this to go, so bear with me on this. We'll do a little trial and error here and see how it goes. But I guess I want to give you a recap of what we've been doing since our last meeting. First of all, I think I can't say this enough. I'm the typical new hire problems where HR's had to lead me through all the ropes of enrolling all the insurance and that type of thing. IT has had to hold my hand. Amy gets an award for explaining everything. And, where's the coffee maker? Where's all the important questions. So they've been doing a great job, and I appreciate their patience. Vince, who I don't think is here tonight, Vince, on the 4th of January, put together an orientation session for our community boards that deal with real estate development. I think probably most of you know this, but maybe the community doesn't. That we're the visible part of city government that people see, but what you don't see is all the volunteer boards and commissions that kind of do the grunt work. And again, they're really behind the scenes, but they make we couldn't function without them. And the 3 that are under Vince's supervision are the Design and Review Board, the Planning Commission, and the Board of Zoning Appeals. And just like council, there's a fair amount of turnover in those groups, and he did an orientation session 5:30 last Thursday, or weekly Thursday, and I think it was pretty well received as far as it's kind of the same type of orientation we did for council. Like, here's the type of things you want to run into. Here's how you might want to handle these situations. So we had that take place. January 5th, we had a meeting of the nominating committee for Worcester Growth. I know that's been an item of discussion recently about what the role of Worcester Growth is, and what we'd like to do, probably a few months from now, maybe come in at 7 o'clock some night. I think the new president or the next president of Worcester Growth is someone that wouldn't mind talking and explaining what the role is. So we'll come in and maybe do a little presentation, not so much for council, but also for the public about what is Worcester Growth, what's its role, what's it do. So you can look forward to that. I know you can't wait. same day, Mr. Sanders and I met with Joel, and we talked about ways we can maybe improve on getting our communications out to council. And I thought that was fairly productive. Craig may have his own thoughts on that, but I thought it went pretty well. One of the things we're trying to do is get the agenda package out to you earlier, and we did that last week, I think. And again, we're trying to keep that up. And the only catch on that, of course, is that the earlier you get it out, the more likely it could be revised between the day you see it and the day of council meeting. Pick your poison on that one, but we're gonna aim to get it out earlier and give you an opportunity to look to digest it more in advance of council meeting. Then Monday night last week, I know Mr. Sanders and Joel and I went to the open house at the College of Worcester for the new president, Ann McCall. Nice to meet her and have a chance to talk a little bit. I'm sure there'll be more conversations down the road. The next day there was kickoff breakfast for Wayne Economic Development Council out at the Career Center. Again, another group that maybe not a lot is known about in the general public, but it's very important for economic development in Worcester and Wayne County overall. A little different, whereas Worcester Growth is actually an arm of the city government, and it's created by statute. Wayne Economic Development Council is an independent group on which the mayor of Worcester just has an automatic seat on that. So again, you'll maybe hear more about that in coming meetings. Then I had a meeting with Gabe Tudor, the superintendent of Worcester City Schools last week. Gabe I've known really ever since he came to town. Did some work for him as an attorney, or for the school district as an attorney. And so it wasn't a matter of getting to meet him, but we did have a chance to sit down and talk about his goals for the school district and my goals for the city. And not really surprisingly, there was quite a bit of overlap, so I'm looking forward to working together with him because we have a lot of common objectives, particularly when it comes to the downtown area. And then last Thursday, Joel and I met with Kayla Atchison. Kayla is the resident of Doylestown and serves as district director for Congressman Max Miller, who represents Ohio's 7th District in Washington. And she provided us with some updates and also provided Joel some information about some funding opportunities through grants that I know that he's going to follow up on. And finally, the last thing I have is in previous years, and I think this is pre-COVID, there were quarterly meetings between the mayors of Rittman, Orville, and Worcester, and their city managers, whatever that job title varies from place to place. And those went away during COVID, I think, and they haven't started up again. And I know both mayors a little bit, and we've talked about getting those revived, so we're trying to get that scheduled out. But we all think, you know, to some extent, we're different communities, but we all face the same problems to some extent. And, you know, there's some opportunities there for, to accomplish some things together, we think. I did want to give you a brief preview of the agenda for tonight. The first thing that we have on the agenda is the third and final reading of the marijuana moratorium legislation. This is a third reading. The Brenneman administration wanted to tee that up for this council on purpose. It was introduced in December and had its first reading then, second reading, first meeting of January. Now it's there before you, and mostly so the council could have the opportunity to act on it one way or the other. It's modeled after the moratorium that was put in place when medical marijuana was authorized years ago. And it's not to stop the sale of marijuana in the city. It's to allow us an opportunity to develop some guidelines for that if and, you know, once we see what the state wants to do in terms of its legislation. You know, this was a little different because the legalization of it came from a taxpayer initiative. So the state legislature was kind of handed this and said, okay, now you make up the rules. So we expect there's going to be some type of regulatory framework put in place, similar to what's in place now for alcohol, but we have yet to see what that is. So always putting this moratorium out there, or proposing it, is to give us a time to develop ourselves what the regulatory guide framework is going to be once we see what the state authorizes us to do. I can't say the question, I've had conversations with several of the council people, and the questions come up, is this necessary? And I can't tell you that it is. it may make no difference at all. It might, though, fall in the category that it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Because what we're trying to do is make sure that, I shouldn't say make sure, but the risk is possible that some entrepreneur could get something established before the regulatory framework's in place, and then claim a right to continue that once the regulations are there on a grandfather basis. So we'd like, just like being sure that the same rules are in effect for everybody there. But that being said, I've got no strong feelings one way or the other on this piece of legislation. Council's got to do with it what you choose to do, and I'll support council on whatever you decide to do here tonight. Just almost a fun fact, if you think of it this way, but, you know, in Ohio, issue 2 passed with 57% of the vote. In Wayne County itself, it failed by just about the same number. In the city of Worcester, it was pretty close to 50-50. It narrowly passed, but it was pretty much a split community vote on that one. So, as far as having a mandate from the public, I don't think we have one. So that's the first item. The other one I would mention, 2024-06, which is going to be introduced by Mr. Malta. If you look at the price tag on that particular piece of legislation, it's not that big, but just a reminder that this is part of a very big project. 7.7 million improvements to our wastewater treatment plant. So big terms in both the dollars and importance. Mr. Abernathy's got 2 pieces of legislation that are part of the required steps to implement the utility aggregation the voters approved back in November for both natural gas and electric. And then Mr. Huzai will be introducing legislation that will authorize authorizing the city to lease a house back here on Walnut Street, I think I'm facing the right way, to Community Action for their use in the workforce housing program. The house was purchased in the last year. It's adjacent to the alley. That's a very tight alley. And then at some point down the road, I expect that house is going to go away and the alley is going to be widened. But until that happens, we've got a house there and Community Action can use it. Mr. Huzai is going to speak more to that when we get to that point. Everything else on the agenda I would characterize as usual and customary, which doesn't take anything away from their importance. So apologies for droning on, but that's what we have before us tonight. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Hamilton, we have no petitions?
Nope.
All right, and communications from the public, we have 2 people that have signed up. Mr. Fox, I'm assuming you want to talk about the house rental. Did you want to do that now, or did you want to wait till the legislation? It's up to you. Okay, because at this point, it's down the agenda piece, so at that point.
Sure, I'm able to speak.
That's fine.
I just wanted, this 45-minute presentation will be, really, it's a no-brainer. And it's another opportunity, I think, as a community nonprofit to really express accolades to city administration. There is an incredible need for workforce housing. It's something that is very deep into our strategic plan and mission. We are working through the land bank and various other mechanisms to really develop more opportunities in the workforce housing sector. So the recognition, the vision of the city to recognize that this property may be of need at some point, but in the immediate, we've got a decent house with good bones, that now the city does not have to worry about the upkeep and maintenance of a property that ultimately will likely be torn down. That'll be our role as community action and property manager of that. What we are planning to do specifically is turn it into a program house. So looking at our mission of self-sufficiency, and that's one of those words that what does self-sufficiency really mean? We're going to use it specifically for Head Start. And so families that are at least one member of the family working, trying to break that generational cycle of poverty. And I don't know if anybody has tried to lease or purchase a home recently, but that can be a really difficult hump to get over. So we were working with them on more of a case management level to develop plans. They will pay a small portion of rent. We're thinking $400, $100 of which will go into a matched savings account. So part of this is also engaging our participants in the fiscal and financial process, and some don't have the best banking history. So here's an opportunity for us to help that, and to help them match savings towards a goal of whether it be market rate rental or ideally even home ownership at some point. So that's specifically what the plan is for this house, and we also look to expand that out even into other community building owners that may be of interest. So I would just, if there are any questions, I don't know if this would be the time, or I can wait.
How's the success been of the program overall, excluding this particular property?
All the program houses that are in existence currently have been very successful, and actually surprisingly long-term. We're envisioning it as a 1 to 2 year transition process. We don't want it to create yet another dependency. And so the case management will be very targeted. And when you think about a Head Start family, sooner or later, as I'm abundantly aware, your kids grow up and all of a sudden you don't have that need. And so we're also working on the other side on job skill and development so that we can increase family income and the potential for dual income.
Was this going to be just for a single family, this home?
Yes, this
Okay.
home will be single family.
All right.
Do you currently have other properties in Worcester that you're leasing for this purpose?
There are 2 other program houses, but a different structure. Most of the programming that we're currently involved in that doesn't have the case management element that this will. This is a very targeted program that's looking at really helping people move beyond that cycle. So this has a lot more programming and also expectation on the part of the participants.
Sounds like a great program. Do you see in the future additional need for additional homes to really try and catapult this program?
Yes, yes. We've actually, community action, as I said, this is really to the core of our organization and mission. So we have obtained our Certified Housing Development Organization status, which essentially allows us to be a nonprofit developer. And so in our work with the land bank and other mechanisms, we have the ability to bring in state and federal funds for housing development, whether that be purchase, renovation, new construction, or even just sponsoring other development projects through those financial means. So it's, there's a huge need for workforce housing. In my own staff, I see it every day that you have a staff that's making $15 to $18 an hour, and it's really difficult at this point. And we want our Worcester and Wayne County employees to be living in Worcester and Wayne County.
Yeah, that's something that I'm very concerned about, and it's something that a lot of the voters had voiced during this past election, is that affordable housing, and what does affordable housing mean?
Right.
You can look at one metric, and they say $220,000 is affordable housing. I read an article by the Cleveland Fed that was put out today that said $220,000 mortgage was affordable.
In Cleveland.
Right.
In Cleveland.
The Cleveland Federal Reserve Office, we think about Worcester, we're still fairly industrial. You think of the different manufacturing houses and factories we have around here, and, people make a good living, but between, having a much bigger mortgage now, if you have to move, think about property values are going up, so what's that mean? Your taxes are gonna go up, insurance is gonna go up. And so I have a great amount of respect for the workforce housing concept, because, this is a community that was built on a strong workforce, and, it's good to have partners like Community Action in Worcester to be able to help people move along. But I think that there's a lot of work that we as a city have to do to continue down that path to get to affordable housing.
In general, a good number that we really follow, we don't want folks to be spending more than 30% of their income on any housing-related cost. And so that's rent, mortgage, utilities, which are also increasing or at minimum fluctuating. And so we are seeing a lot of folks through the door who are now paying 60 to 80% towards housing-related costs. And that's a very fragile place to be.
And I can tell you this just from my full-time career in banking, is that we take an annual income aggregate, and if you're above 2.5 times your annual income, you're not gonna get the mortgage. So if a family's making $60,000 a year, they're looking at something in the 150s maybe, and good luck finding a house in the 150s right now. So it's a tough place to be.
So we greatly appreciate the commitment of this council and our city administration for recognizing this and taking what I think are some pretty exciting steps towards meeting two ends.
I think it's really wonderful that not only are you helping to address the need for housing, but also the need for how to acquire housing and how to keep
Right.
housing and how to teach your children how to acquire housing and keep housing. Those are really, really important skills. I mean, we can make housing, well, we can't because we can't manufacture housing, but housing could be made available. But if you don't know how to budget that, and if you don't know how to keep that house, then it's really not of any significance. But what you're doing is really teaching genuine skills
Right.
to people, and that's commendable. It's huge. Thank you.
Absolutely. Anything else?
Thank you.
All right, thank you all very
Thank you.
much. Have a nice evening.
You too.
And we have another person that has signed up to discuss an agenda item, Mrs. Houston.
Now, he didn't give his name and address, so I'm still have to do that.
You're right, did not.
We will.
Well, no, I mean, you knew who he was. I'm here this evening, but I first want to thank Barb, I'm calling them first names, and Jen, because those two people responded to me. And even though I had it on Facebook and I had it on the neighborhood thing, those were the only two people that mentioned it to me. But my question is this, Mr. Mayor. If the state hasn't done anything yet, no one can have a license until they make their decisions. So to me, this is an unnecessary piece of legislation. Nobody's walking around at this point smoking or eating or getting their things unless they're going to Michigan. And all the money is going to Michigan. At this point, even our governor has said something is going to happen with the state because the state voted for it. Whether we're 50 or 49 or 30, we're still part of the state, and they're going to make the decisions. We can't come up with a license here until they make the decisions. So I think maybe this could be tabled until that time comes, because since it's on third reading, we can't get rid of it. But there are times when I was on council when we could put something on table until the time that we need it. And I know they're doing this slowly, but probably that's okay, so we don't run into anything. But I don't see any reason for this, and I'm surprised I'm the only one here in a freezing night, because I had promises, unless you spoke to them, Jen.
I did kind of try to clarify to a couple of other people through
Okay,
social
so
media
maybe
what,
I
and
see,
if I
I
could
just-
maybe explain a little bit to you, and please jump in, members of the administration, but you mentioned tabling this. Essentially, that's what this legislation is tabling the city, allowing anything to happen until the state makes some progress.
But it can't happen until the state makes
But as
the choice.
Mr. Mayor said a little bit earlier, okay, so let's say next Tuesday, the state comes out and says, here's what our laws are going to be now with regard to recreational marijuana. So as soon as that happens, and I've encouraged the city to move very progressively and make sure that we know exactly what's going on at the state level, and to also know what our goals and guidelines are going to be with the city, but there's still going to be a buffer period in there, right? Where it would be possible, if somebody was quick enough on their feet, to perhaps slide in under the radar, under
The
our...
state.
No, somebody who maybe wants to open a dispensary or a grow operation here. So let's say the state says, okay, now, everybody can do it as long as they're under the parameters, and maybe we want to say, okay, but we only are going to allow it in certain zoning, right? Like we do with most of the other businesses here. So this just gives us the control. We're not saying we're not going to allow it. I certainly don't
Says that
intend.
you're going to allow it to me.
That is not how I read it, and that is not what I hope for. I think the voters have spoken, and I know plenty of people who are very excited for this legislation
They're still
at
going
the
to
state level.
Michigan, just so you know.
Oh, I'm fully aware.
Well, they're still gonna continue to go to
They have
Michigan.
to go to Michigan
Right.
right now because the state hasn't made any
Right. And that's a lot of money. I don't use
provisions.
anything. but-
And that's,
But no judgment, Linda.
and that's okay, because, you know, I know plenty of people who do use medicinal marijuana for good purposes, and the thing is, we can't do anything until the state does something, and you're absolutely right about that. We can't even, I mean, nobody can come in and sneak anything through
Nothing.
until
So I
the
just
state.
think
There
this is-
can't be any, we're going to establish a dispensary or a grow place
Right.
and expect to be grandfathered in. That's absolutely impossible, because you cannot do it without state regulation. Plus, if it's going to happen, if it rolls out the same way it did with medical marijuana, Worcester's not going to get a dispensary. Worcester's probably not going to get a grow space. I mean, they're in larger cities.
I don't
Now,
think that's true, but.
well, you know, and maybe.
Maybe.
We can debate that later, but I feel like
But it's not going to happen tomorrow, and it's not going to happen next month. It's probably
So
not going to
why
happen
have-
next year.
That's
I
just-
think the concern, well, I had the same question, because I was approached with this piece of legislation, and and my question was, if the state is not going to make these regulations, then why do we need to? Well, the concern is that we need to make sure that we're ready to go once the state is ready to go. And I think this gives us the opportunity to do that. Is it unnecessary?
Yes.
Can I
It
jump in?
probably is unnecessary.
Hey, let me, before we get too far down the rabbit trail here, we haven't even read the legislation yet for the third time. Did you have anything else that you wanted to share, Ms. Houston?
No, I don't think it should be passed.
Okay, well, we appreciate your
Thank you.
opinion, thank
Thank
you. All right, so at this point, we'll have plenty of time to discuss that when we get to it, which at this point is going to be shortly. Next item was committee reports, public hearings, which we had neither. So at this point, we will move into unfinished business, which is the third reading of Resolution 2023-86. If Ms. Hamilton, you'll do us the pleasure of reading that, please.
Resolution number 2023-86, a resolution imposing a moratorium on the granting or processing of permits for any building, structure, use, or change of use that would enable cultivation, processing, or retail sale of marijuana within the city of Worcester and allowing for immediate enactment.
Ms. Knappich, the floor is yours.
I will move for adoption. I have discussed this with the city, and they know what my concerns are. My concerns are not with respect to people doing things in their home, on their own property, that is well within their rights to do. We can't interfere with that. My only concern was how to regulate the smoking or vaping of marijuana in public places. I would like the city to look at that and put something and develop something that we can make sure that when we have, once the state decides to do anything with this, that we're not going to be at Oktoberfest and have that unusual skunk smell over the crowd. That would be a nice thing not to have in the city of Worcester. But what you do in your home, and this would not prevent anyone, our moratorium isn't going to prevent anyone from going to Michigan, doing, having a medical card, partaking in their own houses and in their own property. It doesn't even do anything to prevent them from growing their own, which the legislation allows them to do, because you don't have to be permitted by the city or the state to grow your own. So it wouldn't even do that. I think basically what this does is it gives us a little bit of time while the city is, while the state is looking at their rules and regulations, which I would hope they would put into place fairly quickly to give us some direction, and other entities throughout the state some direction. But I think it gives us a little bit of time for us to make sure that when this does roll out, and it's not an if, it's when this does roll out, that we have certain safeguards in place. You know, what you want to do in your own home, that's what America's for. That's what you should be able to do if it's not hurting anybody else. But those are, do I agree that it's probably not necessary? I watched all this legislation roll out last time around, medical marijuana, and they weren't very quick on it. The state wasn't developing rules. It took even longer to license the pharmacists and the dispensaries and the grow places. I don't think we'll be looking at anything for probably a year down the road. I would be surprised if the state legislature moves any quicker than that. This is not something our state legislature wanted to pass, so I'm pretty sure that it's not on the top of their agenda when they come back from, you know, when they start to back in session. So those are my thoughts on it. I'll open it up to anyone.
Well, before we open it up, we have a motion that
Right.
was relatively long in terms of motion to adopt. Is there a second?
Sorry.
Second.
Second by Ms. Warden. All right,
Okay,
now,
reiterate all my last
let's,
discussion.
well, no,
Can you just repeat them after he called them?
Can I ask Mr. Scavelli, with the concern that was brought up, do you see any potential legal damage that would be done by doing this moratorium?
Absolutely not.
Okay, so whether it's necessary or not necessary, there's no damage that can come from it?
No, the key is, and I think Ms. Warden and Ms. Knappich explained it both very well. What we're really looking here is to hold at this point, because we don't know what this law is going to look like after the legislature gets done with it. What was passed, and this is the part that a lot of people, I know everyone here knows this, but a lot of people don't realize, is that when you voted, the state legislature could ban it completely. They could decide they're not going to do that. Now, I don't think they're going to do that, but I do believe they're going to put different regulations on it. So what I would like us to do is hold off so that when we actually do move forward, or when we decide, you know, what we're going to do, that we actually know what the law is going to be. And I want to make sure that we're giving ourselves time to do that, because we don't know when they're going to make those decisions.
Well, and I would even go this far, is that we have several vape shops in town.
Sure.
And, you know, they may just say, hey, we'll just start sliding this stuff in. It's legal in Ohio now. And we at least then have something in place. We say, no, we have, as a city, have voted that we're putting a moratorium. You can't just start doing this. There's no processes in place. There's no procedures. And it just gives us one more piece that says, hey, pump the brakes and let's let the state handle this.
And I think that's a good statement. Now, that would be illegal in and of itself, even
Right,
if they
even
were
without this
to try
legislation.
that. That would be illegal if they weren't licensed. And like Ms. Knappich pointed out, there's no real way to get a license right now. One thing I did want to address, because you brought it up, is as far as public use. The current law does speak to that. There's not much we can do except for, I'll tell you what I think we can do. But all of this remains up in the air because A, the legislature could change it, and also we don't know how the courts will actually interpret the statute should it actually stay in place. Currently, the same ban would apply for smoking marijuana anyway as for smoking cigarettes. Now, I saw in some of the emails tonight, people were asking, does that apply to other uses? Unclear. Probably there's not really a reason to apply it for use of edibles, for instance, versus smoking, because the smoking ban would only really apply for smoking itself, or maybe vaping, probably vaping. But that would not be allowed in use is not going to be allowed in cars or public places like bars as far as smoking or vaping. Use at all, any kind of use, under the current statute is prohibited on government land. Okay, so that would mean you're not going to walk down the street and smoke marijuana the way you'd walk down the streets on the sidewalk smoking a cigarette. The question that I have, and is that it says that it does not permit use in public places, and nor does it prohibit use in public places. Well, I'm not sure what that means. Okay, and we probably won't know what that means until A, the legislature defines it, or B, the courts tell us what it means. There's only two ways we're gonna find out. And hopefully they will clarify that, but what does that mean? So if I own a bar, right, I'm not allowed to let people smoke inside my bar. Okay, well, great, that means they can't smoke marijuana inside the bar. Can I set up a private, like, gazebo in the back where they can smoke marijuana? Maybe. Can the city prohibit that? We're not entirely sure yet. You know, that'll be, if council wants to try that, and I don't know if they will or not. I think some council members may be in favor of that, some might not be. But we don't know whether that's going to even still be in the statute when it gets finished, or if we'd even be allowed to do it under home rule. So that's kind of the uncertainties, and one of the reasons I'm encouraging you to do the moratorium. Now, the moratorium doesn't really affect that. What the moratorium really affects is the retail sale, processing, and cultivation. That's the only thing we're really putting a pause on now. But right now, we just don't know where this law is gonna be.
Do we have any concern that, kind of similar to what we were talking about earlier, that exact example you just gave, that can't smoke in the bar, but they create the gazebo outside, that they're gonna begin permitting that, and suddenly, you know, once the state gets their rules in place, that they're gonna sit here and try and fight under some sort of grandfathering? I don't, there's nothing from to attach it to, I'm looking just for your kind of clarity that, as you see it.
This law does not affect that part of it, of the law. We're not, when I say I'm not sure what that means, it's because I think the language of the law is unclear. There's a lot of times in the law where language of statutes is unclear. And usually we wait for the legislature to come back and clarify, or for the courts to tell us what that means. Do I think that there's really a risk of someone being grandfathered in if they build their gazebo? I don't. I really don't think that's, because the law is going to be whatever the law is. And if that's permitted and we can't stop it, or if we decide to try to stop it, or if we just say we're not going to try to stop that, that's going to be up to you, and then the courts will have to decide whether we can do it or not. And the truth is, right now, we just don't know. I can read it, you can read it, and I think you'll understand after you read it that it's not really, I mean, it's clear as mud right now as to what it actually means, so.
Would it be wise for perhaps our planning and zoning, or I don't know, one of our volunteer organizations, committees, to start putting forth their ideas for what our ideal legislation will be, so that we can hit the ground running when the city, or when the state finally comes out with what the law is actually going to say?
I do, and I think that's already been being discussed. My
Good.
guess is that it's going to be something that mirrors what we would allow for medical marijuana. And Joel can jump in on that if I'm incorrect on that, but I believe that would be what we would be aiming for.
But like you said, Jen, you know, they could do something a month from now or 2 months from now, and we don't have a moratorium, then we wouldn't, like right now, we limit dispensaries, you know, as a conditional use in I think a C3, processors, you know, within a certain I, and they're allowed in an I2. And so if there's nothing in place, a moratorium's not in place, and they pass that, you could have somebody instantly starting to dispense
R1.
recreational in, you know, maybe somewhere where we don't want it. I read an article this weekend it wasn't here, it was somewhere else in Ohio, I think Cleveland, that currently owns a medical dispensary, and they were saying, we're doing everything we can up to selling it to be ready, because as soon as they drop those rules, we want to have people in place, you know, we have all of our facilities in
Sure.
place, and our supply chains and everything, so that we can start, because they anticipate a huge expansion in their business at that point. So they are gearing up to be ready to go as soon as the state comes down with their licensing and regulations.
But the current laws that we have in effect for dispensaries and grow farms would also, it wouldn't affect at all?
Right now, it's just medical.
No.
Just
It's a
medical
totally
marijuana.
different, recreational is like,
But
it's
don't-
like beer versus OxyContin. I mean, it's, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
It's
I, well.
Very regulated.
Kind of like
Yeah.
beer and hard alcohol, basically.
No, you need a prescription for medical marijuana, so it's a completely different class.
I understand that. I understand
If
that.
I can jump in on that, they're both authorized under separate statutes, like
Right.
Ms. Warden was saying, and
But you have to have it dispensed out of a dispensary, correct?
it will be, yeah, retail sales will be work in a similar way, but they will require a different license.
Right.
And that would be regulated under different statutes, so.
They'll have to
it's
apply for
different-
it under the new laws that we don't yet have.
Correct.
Or the-
So basically, nobody can
Right.
apply because there's
Right.
no application process or guidelines
Right.
to apply for. So the people saying we don't really need this, like was brought up earlier, is true because by definition, they can't apply, and we're going to put in a moratorium that says you can't apply. Well, you already can't apply because there is no application process. I agree with all that. I also understand the city saying, yeah, but if it passes tomorrow, we want to make sure we have some time to put our guidelines in place, have council consider them, get public input, all that's great. Do we have a time? I didn't see in this, and maybe I didn't read it carefully enough. Once the state issues their guidelines and licensing procedures, how long are we giving ourselves to enact our laws and take and lift the moratorium and implement our guidelines? I didn't see that. It was probably in there.
So in our current legislation, I believe I have it in July, if I remember correctly, let me bring it up here. Now, there's nothing in here there's nothing in the state law that would stop us from extending that if we thought it was necessary, or lessening it if we don't think it's necessary. So you
Okay.
guys can change that at any time.
But that date certain that if the regulations are available, we're not going to be able to sit on this moratorium for 5 years while
No,
everybody
the-
else is moving
The drop dead date
forward.
is July 31st.
Okay, that's all I needed. As long as we have a mechanism that this goes away once the state gives us our guidelines. That's,
Yeah, and now you could make it less than that or extend it.
Mr. Fuzet?
Just 2 quick points, and then I can yield my time. Just real quick, just wanted to dispense the notion that this isn't coming. I know a couple folks in local real estate. They've already had inquiries from folks outside of the community, so this is coming, and I think it would behoove us to make sure we get our ducks in a row before this comes down the pike at us. The other point I just wanted to touch on real quick, Chief Fisher, have you given any thought to how the issue 2 issue might affect the way your folks do business and your police force? Do you have any thoughts or insight on that?
There's another interesting question. It's difficult from the ground up, from an enforcement standpoint, just because there's no place around to test anything less than bulk amount. So, I mean, even at a most basic level, how are you gonna prove it's marijuana? The only way you can do that today, if it's less than bulk amount, is the city pays to have it tested.
You're talking in cases of OVI or something of that nature? Okay.
Yeah.
And there's no
DCI,
OVI
state crime lab,
regulations.
will not accept
There's no
anything less than
percentages,
bulk
no
amount.
Have you heard any, had any communications with anybody at BCI or county prosecutor's office or anything?
Because
Okay.
they're not adding chemists, they're dropping those numbers, so.
Would it be fair to say that, from your perspective, that infrastructure hasn't been put in place yet, so it'll
Correct.
give you significant challenges in the job you guys are doing?
Correct.
Okay.
And to make it clear, I didn't mean to sound like this is never going to come to Worcester. I'm sure there are people who are interested in bringing this to Worcester. What I meant was the state is not going to act on this likely, and I'll eat my words if I'm wrong, but I don't see the legislature moving on this very quickly. And then when they did give licenses for medical marijuana, it was to the larger cities first. So while this may eventually come to Worcester, I don't think it's going to be within the next 6 months.
I just want to chime in on that, because I've been to Colorado many times. I took my 13-year-old out there, and she said, "Dad, what is gas and grass?" It's not what we want in Worcester, at least not me. So it can come very quickly and it can hit you and you can't even stop it. Just my statement.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you, Barb, that what you do in your home is your business, and if they want to, if the citizens want to partake in their own homes, that's their business, but I do believe that, you know, I think what we're all alluding to is, how do we handle it for public consumption, and, you know, what are the limits, and as our Director of Law has made it very clear, it's as clear as mud. So at this point, we're just kind of filibustering until the state gives us something.
All right, well, with that, we've had ample discussion, and Ms. Hamilton, if you'll call the roll on the vote to accept.
Mr. Myers?
No.
Mr. Abernathy?
Yes.
Mr. Malta?
Yes.
Ms. Warden?
Yes.
Mr. Huzay?
Yes.
Ms. Knappich?
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey?
Yes.
All right, motion approves. All right, thank you, council. That was a rather spirited conversation, as we expected. That moves us into new business. We'll have our first reading of Resolution 2024-04, which I will mention that is a budgeted item. And before Ms. Warden can do this, you would introduce this, Ms. Hamilton?
Resolution number 2024-04, a resolution authorizing the Director of Administration to advertise according to law and enter into a contract with the lowest and best bidder for the resurfacing of various roads within the city of Worcester and providing for immediate enactment.
Thank you. Ms. Warden, the floor is yours.
Thank you. The city is requesting approval from council to advertise for bids to resurface the following streets: Robin Hood Drive, Friar Tuck Circle, Little John Lane, Fairview Circle, and Allendale Drive, along with portions of Sherwood Drive, West Henry Street between South Columbus and South Grant, and Timken Road, the city-owned portion of that. The city's engineer office has assessed these streets and believes that they're in poor condition and that they're in need of resurfacing. The estimated cost for the project is $725,000, and it is expected to be completed this summer. Mr. Rice is here this evening in case anybody has any questions on this or any of the other items that we'll be going over this evening. This is a pretty straightforward item. I think as much as people hate seeing construction all the time, they also like to have nice, smooth roads. And so this is something that I think everyone will be happy to have. And as Mr. Sanders said, this is a budgeted item, so I would like to move to adopt.
Motion to adopt by Ms. Warden. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Zai. Ms. Hamilton, if you call the roll, please.
Any discussion?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there any discussion?
When do we expect the work to begin and complete? When do
This
we
summer.
expect
This summer.
so just, because there's a lot of stuff going on in town right now. Just curious, we don't anticipate any crossover. The fiber stuff going to be done by the time this starts, so that half the town's not, no?
No, the fiber won't be done at all, but, I mean, they're working underline and underground and doing aerial, so.
Now, they're still stopping traffic and redirecting people, so,
There's gonna be a lot of construction going on this spring, summer, but we try to coordinate the best we can between the various contractors and projects.
and we feel like this is an absolutely urgent, that we're gonna have a lot of street disruption for the second summer in a row.
It's going to be nonstop, just letting you know. In terms of
Right.
road
This
construction.
will be too.
there's a lot of roads that they
This is
all-
ongoing, Mr. Abernathy, every year.
I get it.
We're just giving you a heads up on which ones we're gonna disrupt this time.
Yeah,
But there's a long list.
it's never ending.
I will say it's not as much as we've done in the past. We've pretty much we've caught up a lot. You know, we were well behind after the recession
Right.
and then, you know, and the state budget cuts. So we delayed a lot of this stuff for many years. So there was a lot going on in past years because we were catching up. We pretty much got to the point where we're caught up. We're starting back in to look at some of the, most of this is in an allotment, not on a main street, not on an arterial. So it's not going to affect, it's going to affect the people there, obviously, very
Well,
much so.
there's other stuff on here as well,
But
that's
mostly in
coming.
that neighborhood, so.
Well, and I think that it's true that every summer we do have quite a bit of stuff going on, and frankly, that's what makes us progressive in that we're able to do the streets, and we're able to widen things, and we're able to improve things, and I just hope that the people who are watching take note of the streets that are going to be disrupted, and remember that come May or June, when they go to call us and say, I can't get out of my street, or I can't get into my street. But it is, I realize it is difficult for people when it's happening on their streets. It's a challenge.
All right, well, Ms. Hamilton, please call the roll.
Mr. Abernathy.
Yes.
Mr. Malta.
Yes.
Ms. Warden.
Yes.
Mr. Huzay.
Yes.
Ms. Knappich.
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
All right, Resolution 2024-04 passes. Next item, Resolution 2024-05. Ms. Hamilton, if you please read it.
Resolution number 2024-05, a resolution authorizing the Director of Administration to advertise for bids and enter into a contract with the lowest and best bidder for the replacement of the water line on Billiard Street and Billiard Alley and allowing for immediate enactment.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hamilton. Mr. Malta, this is yours, and also a reminder, this is also a budgeted item.
Which is wonderful, and I do have my help over here next to me, which is great. My understanding is this 4- and 6-inch cast iron pipes that are in desperate need of repair. So, yeah, it's 26 water services. That's what it includes, and I'll let Mr. Rice take any other questions.
Is there any other questions for Mr. Rice?
I would just say this is really great. This, as you know, I'm sure there've been a lot of issues over there with the drainage and the water. I have a family friend who lives in that neighborhood, and have gone out on various occasions and seen the depths of the water after some good rain, and I think the neighborhood over there is going to be really grateful for this, so thank you.
All right. Mr. Malta, do you have a motion for us?
I have a motion to enact.
All right, motion to adopt. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Huzay. Ms. Hamilton, please call the roll.
Mr. Malta.
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey.
Yes.
Ms. Knappich.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Mr. Huzay.
Yes.
Mr. Abernathy.
Yes.
Ms. Warden.
Yes.
All right, motion approved, thank you. Resolution 2024-06, Ms. Hamilton, if you please read.
Resolution number 2024-06, a resolution authorizing the Director of Administration to enter into a professional services contract with Jones and Henry for engineering construction services and allowing for immediate enactment.
Thank you, Ms. Hamilton. Mr. Malta, this is yours to introduce, and it's also a budgeted item.
Which is another wonderful thing, thank you. I did a little research, this is Jones and Henry. We like them as a city, we've used them many times. The project is anticipated 12 to 18 months, and they will provide site on preliminary, final walkthrough, and equipment startup. It's billed out at $336,000. And if there's any further questions, I will let Mr. Rice take those.
And this is related to the work at the wastewater plant? Correct. Okay. I knew that, but I just want to make sure everybody else did.
Is this the last contract with these folks? I know we've had previous contracts for the wastewater treatment plant.
For this is specifically for the headworks and the VLR 1 and 2 construction. So yes, for those particular projects, this would be the last engineering contract.
Okay, what have we spent with these folks for engineering on this wastewater treatment project up until now?
They did some, I don't know the numbers, but they did, you guys approved design contracts with them
Right.
for this, a contract for the study of the plant itself, capacity study, which they're still working on, of course. I'm trying to think of-
UV disinfection.
UV disinfection, is that design as well.
Okay, the reason why I'm asking is I know we've used them for this, for the wastewater treatment project in the past. And everything's been kind of chopped up. You know, we didn't have like, here's $1 million for this company. We've had a little bit here, a little bit there. And I just want to keep track of how much we're spending in engineering and design on this wastewater treatment plant, in addition to the other expenses involved. This is a huge, huge undertaking. It's extremely, lot of money, and I just want to stay up on top of the money, so when people ask me where it's going, I can not only have the bits and pieces, but the overall picture, and know what we're doing here.
Right,
So,
as the mayor said, this is, if you look at it, it's $7.7 million of construction for the headworks and VLR 1 and 2. So this construction engineering contract is for both of those projects.
all right. And this engineering services is in addition to, or isn't that included in 7.7 million?
This is in addition to that. 7.7 million is the construction cost.
Okay. All right. Just so I know down the road, I mean, total cost of the entire project.
Mr. Zay?
Yeah, I was just going to request, Mr. McGuire, maybe this would be a good opportunity, maybe sometime in the next few months, we can get a committee meeting together or something to catch council up to speed on what's going on at the wastewater plant.
We actually started this back 2 years ago.
Mhm.
It actually was the previous utility manager, Nate, was here. And that was in the summer, I think around June, 2 years ago. So we periodically over the last, almost 4 years time, over the last few years, given periodic updates of here's all the projects, here's where we're at on all of those. So we've done that several times, but obviously that was before the latest group, so that absolutely we could bring all that stuff back, see where we're at. We're getting close to the end of that. We have one more project to do that here.
Joel, I think when.
I know in the community of Worcester, this is a fun dinner time conversation, the wastewater plant, so.
Joel, when Nate brought this to the city's attention, which I believe was like his last meeting, right, it was his parting gift to us. It was about a $12 million estimate on the overall cost for all of the projects, all of the renovations and upgrades we're going to be doing. Is that right? And are we still within that? Was it more than that?
More than that, so there's digesters of solid size.
Right.
That we haven't bid out yet.
Right.
There was the headworks and there's the VLRs,
Right.
were the main components of that.
Mhm.
The digester side is different engineer, not so,
I just didn't know how close to that original estimate we are going to fall. I know inflation and other costs have skyrocketed, so I'm just curious. I mean, we all know we can't live without this.
No,
You know, we need it.
Well,
I can't live without it.
Right.
And what was
right.
the last, I mean, the last major project was when? Was 2000 and,
4 years ago.
almost maybe
For the-
15,
for the
last
waste-
piece of it, maybe
Yeah.
like 15 years ago.
so,
It's been, it's.
so
dated into-
at this point, I mean, you know, the unfortunate thing is the facility runs 24/7, and at this point,
We're more than due for this.
15
absolutely
years into it, and this is where we are. I mean, at this point, this is just the perpetual nature of what we have to do.
Right.
And that
It's like road paving, it's just
Right.
never ending.
Yeah.
What we do try to do is, when we issue debt, if we can, as much as possible, time that up so that we,
Yeah.
we're paying off that debt before we're starting the next big.
Before we
Right.
start the next
We
one.
keep 50 to
Yeah,
20.
good job on that.
Yeah.
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 Okay. So do you have a motion for us, Mr.
I
Malta?
would like to move to adopt.
Motion to adopt, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Abernathy. Ms. Hamilton, please call the roll.
Mr. Gaffey,
Yes.
Ms. Knappich,
Yes,
Mr. Myers,
Yes.
Mr. Huzay,
Yes.
Mr. Abernathy,
Yes.
Ms. Warden,
Yes.
Mr. Malta.
Yes.
All right, motion to adopt approved. Next item, Resolution 2024-07. This will be introduced by Ms. Warden. It is a budgeted item, but we'll let Ms. Hamilton read it for us before Ms. Warden.
Resolution number 2024-07, a resolution authorizing the Director of Administration to advertise according to law and enter into a contract with the lowest and best bidder for the improvement of various roads within the city of Worcester and providing for immediate enactment.
Ms. Warden, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So we've had a lot of discussion about roundabouts, and everyone's got a very strong opinion on all of them, but I, for one, am excited to bring this to council this evening. The city is requesting an authorization from council to advertise for bids, and this is for improvements and a three-way roundabout at the intersection of Oak Hill and Milltown Roads, also leading up to the Commerce Parkway area. It does not affect the location of the entrance of the Hunt Club development. I know there's been some speculation on that. The project includes new pavement, curbs, gutters, sidewalk, a multi-use path, storm sewers, and extension of the sanitary sewer. We've seen an improvement in traffic flow with the construction of the Oak Hill and Old Man Roads roundabout. So this project is expected to be a continuation of that progress. It will also be really nice for pedestrians, cyclists, and other non-motorists to have, a nice, safe path between the north end and the high school campus and Oak Hill Park. Cost for the project is $4.5 million, and this is part of the TIF financing program that we adopted last year. And I believe Mr. Sanders said it is a budgeted item, but if he didn't, I will say that. So after the bid is accepted, we can begin work as soon as weather allows, which is exciting. I think this is something that we need, and it's definitely gonna be some growing pains in terms of, being under construction up in that area, because it is just a high-traffic area. There's a lot going on, a lot of people, a lot of different types of drivers. But I think overall, this is gonna be a really good move for us, so I would make a motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt by Ms. Warden. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Myers. Any discussion?
Can I, being new to the council, I've not caught up with all the plans. Where, so I know the general vicinity, but whereabouts is the roundabout gonna end up being? It obviously can't be at the very end, you're gonna drop off a cliff somewhere there. Is it, I assume you're moving it back towards the direction of the high school bit?
Southwest.
So southwest, so it's gonna kind of, where it's going straight now, it's gonna kind of, if you're going to the dead end, it's gonna move off to the left a little bit. And then, it won't affect the Hunt Club entrance, but I assume once you get past there, you're gonna be, that road's gonna be closed for a bit. And then, Oak Hill at the end also closed. So rerouted traffic will likely be back to getting Highland down to Smithville Western, up by the high school onto Burbank, so there's gonna be high congestion in those areas through the spring and summer.
It'll be longer than that. I checked with Mr. Rice to see if there was a way that we could avoid interrupting the school year and the bus traffic. Unfortunately, it's going to actually entail, it's going to take place probably the end of this school year, through the summer, and at the beginning of next school year. So, yep. But I think the city did work around, adding the three-way stop at Milltown and Oak Hill was a way to keep the traffic flow safer and more, just moving along nicer for everybody. So I'm sure that if a situation arises that we're not already, expecting, that we'll try to take as, swift of an action as we can to remediate that.
It's just that's a very busy end of town. I get it. I'm not saying that it doesn't need to be done, but again, compounding the other projects going on in town, this is a massive disruption.
Yep.
And I'd be remiss if I'm not at least speaking out for the citizens of Worcester that, this is a big, big undertaking. They've gone through all of the other ones the past couple of years. We'll get through it, but there's going to be dissatisfaction with it. And it's really gonna get messy, especially for people trying to pick up kids at Edgewood who have to work through the neighborhood, the high school as well, because now you have really limited access to the schools.
I would just say that, thank God that the Dix Expressway is almost done. Because having, the intersection at Oak Hill and Old Man closed with, I mean, the phone calls were just, I'm sure Joel probably still fondly remembers some of those callers from, complaining about every single road being under construction, and it took me 45 minutes to get to Bueller's Milltown, and I mean, just,
I'm somewhat optimistic that the intersection that's gonna be affected isn't right in front of us. It isn't right in front of the high school, and also the majority of the city lies to the south and the east of this intersection, including schools. So I don't think it will be as bad as traffic when we did the other roundabout. Yeah, cautiously optimistic.
We've also, over the years, Mr. Abernathy, there's been a number of accidents at that intersection, and one of the reasons for putting this in is it's going to be safer for the drivers, and we have a lot of young, new drivers that might be coming through that intersection, and I'd rather see a disruption now than to wait till somebody dies.
Sure,
mean,
I don't
You'd
disagree,
rather
Mr.
wait for
Myers.
that, I guess, I mean.
I don't disagree, but I would just be remiss if I don't at least acknowledge that there's going to be some frustrated citizens.
There will be, and we deal with those, and that's part of our job.
Okay.
In addition to safety, we are going to be adding lighting at that intersection. I know that was very important to Mr. Albright.
Yes.
up
Oh,
there.
that's excellent.
And if we reach our goals, we'll have another roundabout at the end, more of a peanut style at the other end of Oldman and Burbank and Winkler. So in several years, there will be no kid that graduates from the high school with his driver's license and doesn't know how to navigate a roundabout in the city of Worcester.
They might add
That's a
that to
long
the
term.
driver's test.
I think they should, and
Bring
everyone
back
should come to
Fairhope.
Worcester to practice.
Oh, you don't need to go to Worcester, you can go to Greene, and there's 3 of them in a row.
Medina, they're all over.
Yep.
yeah.
Within 1,000 feet of each other. It's terrible. All right, well, if we've felt we've had enough conversation with this, do you have a motion, Ms. Warden?
Yeah, I move to adopt, please.
And it was seconded.
Jordan's already been seconded? Oh, my goodness. My apologies. All right, we'll call the roll, please.
Ms. Knappich,
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Mr. Huzay,
Yes.
Mr. Abernathy,
Yes.
Ms. Warden,
Yes.
Mr. Malta,
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey.
Yes.
Okay, resolution is approved. Next resolution, 2024-08. Ms. Hamilton, if you please read it for us.
Resolution number 2024-08, a resolution authorizing the Director of Administration to advertise for bids and enter into a contract with the lowest and best bidder for the replacement of the water line on Palmer Street, north of Bowman, and allowing for immediate enactment.
Thank you. Mr. Malta, this is yours to introduce, and it will remind you, it is a budgeted item, so floor is yours.
Wonderful thing. Thank you, Mr. President. And I do have my team over here to help me again. This is desperately needed, and Palmer Street will be getting repaved this summer, so hopefully this work can coincide. It's my understanding, and that will make you, Miss Mike, very happy to hear that news. However, it is desperately needed, and yeah, this will go a long way for those residents there.
Once upon a time, I lived on Palmer, so yes, I agree.
Okay.
Definitely needs it.
Any questions?
Are we going to do any improvements to that street then, at all? Once the new water lines are in, are we going to,
We'll
Make-
resurface it, that's part of our ODOT Large Cities Funds.
Okay.
Tap paving project, so, yeah,
Okay.
that's why we want to get the water line replaced first.
okay,
Get that done, and we'll resurface it, later in the summer.
okay, so no curbs and sidewalks, that kind
No,
of
no.
thing?
it's not
Just
gonna be a
resurfacing?
reconstruction, it's just gonna be a resurfacing.
Okay, thank you.
Is this going to start at Bowman, or is it more north of there? I see that it's up to Wayne Avenue.
The water line would be from Bowman to Wayne.
Okay, the entire length of it. You'll end at my driveway.
All right, since we've had discussion, do we have a motion, Mr. Malta?
I would like to move to adopt.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Malta, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Knappich. Ms. Hamilton, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mr. Myers,
Yes.
Mr. Huzay,
Yes.
Mr. Abernathy,
Yes.
Ms. Warden,
Yes.
Mr. Malta,
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey,
Yes.
Ms. Knappich.
Yes.
Okay, motion to adopt approved. Next item, Resolution 2024-09, which will be introduced by Ms. Warden, and again is a budgeted item. So Ms. Hamilton, will you please read the resolution, please?
Resolution number 2024-09, a resolution authorizing the Director of Administration to advertise according to law and enter into a contract with the lowest and best bidder for the purchase and installation of a traffic signal and related equipment at State Route 585 and State Route 3 and 83 northbound ramp, and allowing for immediate enactment.
Thank you. Ms. Warden, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Now, if we were putting a roundabout in here, we wouldn't need to replace the traffic signal, but I don't know how that would work with the on-ramp to the highway, though. So this is, the city is looking to replace the traffic signal located at the intersection of State Routes 585 and 83, right in front of Gojo. They are beyond their useful life and in need of replacement. So the city's asking for council's authorization to advertise for bids to replace the signal. We also happen to be eligible for a $55,000 grant from ODOT that will reduce the city's responsibility from $260,000 to $205,000 of the total expense. Mr. Rice and I discussed this briefly, and he said he anticipates a considerable lead time on the materials, so we want to get this out to bid as soon as possible. And the one thing I forgot to ask you is, will the old signal need to come down before the new one is installed?
Typically, they leave the old one up.
Okay. Perfect. Yes, and this is a budgeted item, and therefore I'd like to motion to adopt.
Ms. Warden motions to adopt. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Moulton. Ms. Hamilton, will you please call the roll?
Oh,
Can I
Mr.
ask
Mayor
a
wanted to.
question?
Yeah, I had
sorry.
a question as well.
I didn't, Ms. Warden made her comment in just a little bit, but that's, true. You look at the cost of the initial installation of a roundabout, and that's it. You pay that and you're done. In addition to the better traffic flow and the safety issues, that cost is done. Traffic signals need replaced. 10 years, 15 years?
About 25.
It's not bad.
And,
And you're gonna pay, you repave the roundabout, how often? 10 years? So I mean, if you start looking at the cost, I mean, at this point, the reality is the cost is probably the same or very similar over a lifetime. The differentiation is the fact you don't have the maintenance. You've got less of a maintenance issue with a roundabout versus a traffic signal.
True, yeah, but you have pavement underneath the signal too, so.
Well,
it's
that's
not the
true.
same
Oh,
as
absolutely,
before
yeah.
that, too.
So,
I just wanted to make sure I was clear that this is going to be in front of Gojo. I was just reading the whereas here. It says Madison Avenue and State Route 83. I want to make sure it's not over by Bob Evans is kind of what I'm envisioning.
Oh, yeah, that must be a typo in there.
The other two places in here are correct where it says 585.
Okay, just wanted to confirm.
And the only thing I wanted to ask was, you're not going to change up any of the timing for the signal, correct? Because it seems to be, have you done a traffic study that the timing for the signal would stay the same?
I believe that the engineer is using the same timing that's there now. I don't think there's any issues with that.
There's not, that's why, and I travel that daily, so I wanted to make
As do
sure
I.
that you're not going to make me sit at a red light any
Unless you're
longer
sitting
than
for
I
the
have to.
ghost traffic to come out of the Gojo parking lot, and there's no one, and it's like, come on. But that's seldom happens, so.
the signaling on that, Mr. Rice, that's actually driven by the state anyways, is it not? Or do we have any comments with this?
It's by traffic
How that
count.
signal would actually operate?
Well, that's our signal, so
Yeah.
we'll be able to
Okay.
dictate that.
Yeah. But I'm glad it's staying the same, because it works, at least as far as I know. Thank you.
You, all right, call the roll. Ms. Hamilton?
Mr. Huzay.
Yes.
Mr. Abernathy.
Yes.
Ms. Warden.
Yes.
Mr. Malta.
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey.
Yes.
Ms. Knappich.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
All right, resolution 2024-09 is adopted. Resolution 2024-10, which will be introduced by Mr. Abernathy, which at this point is not a budgeted item, and at this point will need a suspension of the rules if we wish to move it along this evening. And with that, Ms. Hamilton, will you please read the resolution?
Resolution number 2024-10, a resolution approving a natural gas aggregation plan of operation and governance and allowing for immediate enactment.
Mr. Abernathy, the floor is yours.
All right, so last November, we all voted for the aggregation of some of our utilities, hopefully to get some better cost. Rather than me try to explain this nice, long governance plan, I'd like to kick it over to the administration so they can feel free to go ahead and share their thoughts on it and explain it a bit.
So, back in May of last year, I sent a memo out to council, and it had pre-ballot issue, process, and post-ballot. There are about 14 items on post-ballot. So the governance plan is basically a more detailed version of those 14 steps. Basically, it just says, here's what we're going to do. And it states that, you know, council's gonna pass this plan, that we're gonna go out and get bids, you know, for electric providers and gas providers for the next piece of legislation as well. It has to be a PUCO certified provider, those kinds of things. People are going to have an opt-out provision. All of the things that basically are summarized in those steps is just put in more of a plan, governance plan. So it's fairly boilerplate things, most of it dictated by statute that you have to do.
So the new council members, the older council members should have that available to them, but for the new council members, can we get that out to them? Or have we made that available to them?
I don't remember, but I can send it.
We received a lot of different things upon coming in, so there's probably a binder somewhere that has it, but we'd appreciate it if you could send it.
Right, one of those light green binders, like Andre sent to finance, because I can always find that one.
He's got all those.
There you go.
So I would just add one question, and I think I know the answer to it. Once this process gets into place and we have everything set up and we communicate with the community, and they want to go ahead and join into the aggregation and they don't opt out, is it going to require each individual citizen to go and opt out of, say, their current provider and opt in? So they're going to have to go in and cancel their current plan? Or is there a process to where this is going to be done seamlessly without any headaches for any of the citizens?
So mostly seamlessly, unless you have already entered into a contract, like if you've signed a 1 or 2 or 3 year contract with a specific provider, you will not be automatically enrolled.
Got it.
Now, we'll try to, as much as possible, get the word out so people have that option. Hopefully, they're in a contract that doesn't have penalties. If our aggregate rate is less than what they're in, that way they could cancel, then opt in. For everybody else, you're gonna be in, but you'll get plenty of notifications for that.
So if somebody moved into their house, they picked Dominion, they didn't sign a contract, they just said, okay, Dominion's who we're going with for natural gas. Once you guys get in place, lots of communication, and it'll just smoothly roll into place.
That's the plan.
Okay, thank you.
All right, with that, do you have a motion for us, Mr. Abernathy?
Yep, I'll motion.
Motion to adopt. is
Suspend.
there a-
No.
Suspend the rules.
Okay, a motion to suspend the rules, sorry.
Motion to suspend the rules. yes,
Second.
thank you. Second by Ms. Knappich.
God, us new guys are just not on the ball.
You'll get there, man.
It's confusing.
Call the roll, Ms.
You know,
Mr.
that's a good
Abernathy.
discussion.
Yes.
Ms. Warden,
Yes.
Mr. Malta,
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey,
Yes.
Ms. Knappich,
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Mr. Huzay.
Yes.
Motion to adopt.
All right, motion to adopt. Is there a
Second.
Second by Ms. Knappich. Any additional conversation?
If I could just ask briefly, when do we expect this to, I know that we've kind of thrown some dates around there, but when do we expect these aggregated rates to come into effect and the program to be underway?
Probably springtime.
Okay.
So assuming these pass tonight, we'll send those governance plans, to Palmer Energy, who's our partner with OML. They certify this to PUCO, and it takes about 30 days.
Okay.
So another 30 days. Then you do RFPs, and I assume they'll do at least 30 days for people to submit RFPs. Once they get back, then they'll review those, and then they'll make a proposal for, here's the lowest one. So least 3 months probably from now before you start seeing letters going out. And like I said before, the letters will have OML, Palmer Energy, and City of Worcester. Anything else you get is not, from the city, not part of the aggregate program. So that's all, you'll see those letters from us, not anybody else.
I think with our utility bills that people are experiencing right now, this is going to be a welcome change.
All right. Ms. Hamilton, call the roll, please.
Mr. Abernathy.
Yes.
Ms. Warden.
Yes.
Mr. Malta.
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey.
Yes.
Ms. Knappich.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Mr. Huzay.
Yes.
Okay, resolution's approved. All right, next resolution, 2024-11. Ms. Hamilton, if you'll please read that.
Resolution number 2024-11, a resolution approving an electric power aggregation plan of operation and governance and allowing for immediate enactment.
Mr. Abernathy, the floor is yours.
Okay, we're kind of in the same ballpark here. I'd go back to administration. Anything different on the electric side than from the gas side?
The only difference is electric we're gonna do right now. Gas will be later, probably in the summer, when we'll take advantage of rates at that time. Just higher rates in the winter.
Okay, then I motion to suspend rules.
Motion to suspend rules, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Gaffey. Call the roll, Ms. Hamilton.
Ms. Warden.
Yes.
Mr. Malta.
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey.
Yes.
Ms. Knappich.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Mr. Huzay.
Yes.
Mr. Abernathy.
Yes.
Okay, the rules have been suspended. Do you have a motion, Mr. Abernathy?
Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt, is there a second?
Second?
Second by Ms. Warden. Ms. Hamilton, if you please call the roll.
Ms. Warden.
Yes.
Mr. Malta.
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey.
Yes.
Ms. Knappich.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Mr. Huzay.
Yes.
Mr. Abernathy.
Yes.
Okay. Is there any additional conversation council needs to have on this item?
That was a motion to adopt.
Was that a motion to adopt? All right, my apologies. Okay,
Long meeting.
now. Next item, resolution 2024-12. So we get to hear from someone new this evening, Mr. Gaffey, but first we'll hear from Ms. Hamilton to read the resolution.
Resolution number 2024-12, a resolution authorizing the Director of Administration to purchase 3 Ford Explorers for use as police cruisers and allowing for immediate enactment.
All right, Mr. Gaffey, this is yours to introduce, and I will just say that it's also a budgeted item, so.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and I'll note that it is marked as NTE, so not to exceed on the budget that was approved. But we have a need to replace or cycle out 3 patrol units. They're getting higher in mileage and will need cycled out. And there are some changes coming on some of the newer vehicles that'll be available. So there will be some new potential for new interior equipment on these vehicles as well. And if it is available in the budget, again, not to exceed, then there is a need also to replace the SWAT van that the department currently has. I'll note that Chief Fisher is here to answer any questions. Generally, there's an estimate per cruiser, I believe, but because of timelines and things, that's why the not to exceed is in there, because there wasn't time to put together individual quotes on each vehicle. And I would motion to adopt.
All right, Mr. Gaffey motions to adopt. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Abernathy. Is there any discussion? Any additional questions for the chief or Mr. Gaffey? If not, Ms. Hamilton, please call the roll.
Mr. Malta.
Yes.
Ms. Warden.
Yes.
Mr. Huzay.
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey.
Yes.
Ms. Knappich.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Mr. Abernathy.
Yes.
Okay, resolution is adopted. All right, well, we have our first ordinance of the evening, which will be introduced by Mr. Huzai, after Ms. Hamilton reads the ordinance.
Ordinance number 2024-03, An ordinance authorizing the Director of Administration to enter into a lease of real estate and providing for immediate enactment.
Mr. Zay, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is an ordinance allowing the city to enter into a lease agreement with Community Action Wayne Medina. We heard from Mr. Fox earlier today about kind of the Head Start program and what Community Action will look to do. We saw the information in our council packets about this. Yeah, this is a property located on Walnut Street, right behind City Hall. The city doesn't have any need for the property at the moment, so this is a similar program to one that we have operated with 180, and that program has gone rather well for us. So 180 and Community Action decided to get together, and Community Action saw more of a need at the moment, and they will basically take over maintenance and of the property and run their program for transitional housing and workforce development, and try to help folks who are trying to break the chains of generational poverty. Mr. Montgomery, anything to add, or Mr. Mayor, anything to add on this? Okay.
My only question is, from a contractual standpoint, I mean, I realize we have no immediate use for the house at the moment, but at this point, I mean, what's our time limit that what kind of time limit do we need to give them if we decide that you need to utilize that property for something more than a resident?
We told them we'd start with a 2-year lease. I think Mr. Fox mentioned, 1 to 1.5 years, sort of typical, or what their goal is to transition.
Mr. Fuzet, do you have a motion for us?
Motion to suspend rules.
Motion to suspend rules, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Abernathy. Ms. Hamilton, please call the roll.
Ms. Warden?
Yes.
Mr. Huzay?
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey?
Yes.
Ms. Knappich?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Abernathy?
Yes.
Mr. Malta?
Yes.
Okay. Rules have been suspended. Mr. Fuzet, do you have another motion for us?
Yeah, I see no reason to hold this up, so let's move this along. Motion to adopt.
All right, motion to adopt, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Myers. Ms. Hamilton, please call the roll.
Ms. Warden?
Yes.
Mr. Huzay?
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey?
Yes.
Ms. Knappich?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Abernathy?
Yes.
Mr. Malta?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance is approved. I guess the rest of the meeting will be a Mr. Fuzet show.
I'll try to make it brief.
Ms. Hamilton, if you'll please read Resolution 2024-13.
Resolution number 2024-13, a resolution authorizing the Director of Administration to purchase a bucket truck.
Mr. Fuzet, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. The city has a bucket truck, which is useful to us, but we need a bucket truck to service the traffic signals, which are kind of growing in height due to the cameras that are now mounted on top of the newer traffic signals. So we need a new bucket truck for this. The city will still utilize the old bucket truck, and any other questions, we could turn it over to Mr. Denny, who is here today, to answer any questions from council.
All right, well, you have a motion for us then, Mr. Fuzet.
Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Ms. Knappich. All right. Call the roll to adopt Resolution 2024-13, please.
Ms. Knappich?
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Abernathy?
Yes.
Mr. Malta?
Yes.
Ms. Warden?
Yes.
Mr. Huzay?
Yes.
All right. Resolution has been adopted. Resolution 2024-14. Ms. Hamilton, please read that.
Resolution number 2024-14, a resolution authorizing the Director of Administration to purchase 2 pickup trucks.
All right, Mr. Fuzet, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Denny's crew needs 2 new pickup trucks for general use, just performing their duties around the city. We have 2 trucks you can see in your council packet here that are beyond their useful life and kind of becoming a headache for Mr. Denny's crew to maintain. Any questions for Mr. Denny? He is here today. I think this is a fairly straightforward resolution.
Do you know what trucks you're going to be purchasing?
Yeah, that's why we're here early, early and often, and you'll see all our contract stuff and fleet too, and Chief Fisher. Just, it's unprecedented times, so you have to go early. There's really not much inventory out there right now, so, yeah, I'm not sure what we'll end up with. We'll seek the best prices and local vendors, and we'll go from there, so.
Good luck.
Are these replacement trucks?
Yeah, yep.
All right, Mr. Zine, do you have a motion for us?
Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gaffey. Ms. Hamilton, please call the roll.
Ms. Knappich,
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey,
Yes.
Mr. Myers,
Yes.
Mr. Abernathy,
Yes.
Mr. Malta,
Yes.
Ms. Warden,
Yes.
Mr. Huzay.
Yes.
All right. Resolution is adopted. Last item on the agenda, Resolution 2024-15. Ms. Hamilton, if you'll please read it for us.
Resolution number 2024-15, a resolution authorizing the Director of Administration to advertise according to law and enter into a contract with the lowest and best bidder for fuel services for city vehicles and allowing for immediate enactment.
Mr. Huzay, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. We bought some new vehicles, now it's time to put fuel in them. This is a resolution to enter a contract with Red Rover, who the city works with to fuel our vehicles, our entire fleet. Mr. Denny, anything to add on this? I know we can save some money with Red Rover, and I think you mentioned they're kind of the only entity in town that can perform this work for us.
Yeah, that's correct. We've been working with them for probably 40 or 50 years as far as purchasing fuel, and they do offer a service, 2 locations, north end and then down here on the south end by the fairgrounds. And so all our services, all our fire, police, all the utilities, we purchase fuel through them, and they have a networking card that we established for each piece of equipment. And then there's a fuel pin assigned to each employee, and it's like a purchasing card, and they're responsible for that pin and not to lose that pin. So it's good tracking. It's a simple way. It's efficient, effective for us.
Did I read this correctly, that the base rate, or the rate is based on the Akron-Canton daily average plus 17 cents per gallon?
Yeah, and so that averages about 3 or 4 cents a gallon cheaper than the general public pays.
That's
So
what I
it's a
would-
little bit of savings there, and it's the most even way. So if prices jump up 10 cents, at the pump, you'll see that, or 20 cents at a time. It kind of evens that out just a little bit better, so it's not as drastic throughout our purchasing.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Zay, do you have a motion for us?
There's no other further questions. Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Myers. Ms. Hamilton, please call the roll.
Mr. Gaffey,
Yes.
Mr. Myers,
Yes.
Mr. Abernathy,
Yes.
Mr. Malta,
Yes.
Ms. Warden,
Yes.
Mr. Huzay,
Yes.
Ms. Knapp.
Yes.
All right. Motion to adopt has been approved. We had no one sign up for our miscellaneous conversation. I just quickly say thank you to everyone. Long agenda. At this point, I'm probably about the only one that's kind of fallen asleep with this, and I apologize. But at this point, we'll start with any last comments from Mr. Huzay.
Nothing to add today. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Abernathy?
Just want to say that, I'm very passionate about what Mr. Fox had brought up today, and there is definitely a need for workforce housing in the city of Worcester, something that we need to continue to strive to find solutions for. We have a very blue-collar, strong community here in Worcester, and with housing prices and taxes increasing on real estate, it's imperative that we continue to try and find solutions to try and relieve the citizens of Worcester. I would be remiss if I didn't say that I don't know what that solution is, but as a council, I think that it's something that we need to periodically discuss and try and find some pathways along with the administration and partner up and try and find some relief for the community.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Knappich?
I just want to say to the finance director, thanks for the good news on the taxes. It's nice to know we've got some little extra money there. And I just want to express my gratitude and the fact that I'm deeply impressed with the police officers who are here, who saved 7 lives this year already. That's just a phenomenal thing to have happen. And of course, they all appeared like it was just part of their job, which I'm sure they think it is, but it's huge to save 7 lives. And I just want to say thank you again.
All right, thank you. Mr. Gaffey?
I don't have any further comments tonight, Mr. President. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Warden?
Just reiterate Ms. Knappich note and just thank all of the fire, EMS, and police officers who were involved in that. It's really remarkable in their, quick response and I suppose, luck that we did happen to have enough units of Narcan to save these lives. It's really special, so we're very grateful to all of them.
All right, thank you. Mr. Malta?
I would like to reiterate the same, sorry.
All right.
I have one final thing. I will be on out of town due to work for our next meeting. So that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Mr. Myers?
I want to thank Chief Fisher for having the officers come down tonight. It was very nice. I'm sure, we just appreciate being a part of that, the accommodations to those folks. Again, I'm sure they felt doing their job, but it's nice to thank them publicly and appreciate you doing that with us. That's part of the strive for excellence that your department continues to do, and we are grateful for you and your service as well as theirs. And we spent $8 million of that extra money tonight, just by the way.
But it was budgeted.
I know, we didn't
It was
actually spend it
budgeted.
tonight, but and that's not a record, but that was, all right.
All right.
That's all I have. Motion
All you
to
have?
adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.
You know,
You sound like my husband,
You know,
it's
you
not
get
a
the
save, you spend.
Right, yeah.
You're not saving money.
Where's the city's race course?
Well, it's right at the, it's got the ticks.
Okay.
We just get out jail free card.
I'll make sure to tell Chief.
Well, I can tell you, it's gonna be cold.